Snow fell thick outside the upscale restaurant at Northgate Plaza, blanketing the city like a cold sheet. She laughed loud, the sound sharp as a knife cutting through the warm air inside. "I don't date maintenance workers," Claire said, pulling her chair back in front of everyone. She walked out, leaving the man sitting still, hands placed neatly on the table, not chasing, not explaining. But the next day, when the snow still hadn't melted, her father stood straight among the crowd and raised his hand to salute the man his daughter had mocked. The restaurant overlooked Northgate Plaza, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a world turned white. Snow continued its silent assault on the city, accumulating on ledges and benches, muffling the usual urban noise into something almost peaceful. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white tablecloths and polished silverware. Ethan Walker sat at table 14, near the window. He wore his work uniform, navy blue, with Northgate Facilities embroidered on the chest. He'd come straight from his shift, exactly as his friend Marcus had insisted. "Just be yourself," Marcus had said. "She'll appreciate honesty." Claire arrived 20 minutes late, shaking snow from her designer coat. She was striking blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, wearing what Ethan guessed was a month of his salary. Her eyes scanned the restaurant, landing on him with visible confusion. "Ethan?" she asked, approaching the table. He stood. "Claire, good to meet you." She remained standing, her gaze traveling from his face to his uniform and back again. Something shifted in her expression. You work here?" "I maintain the building systems, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, all the systems that keep places like this running." Her laugh started small, then grew. Heads turned. The couple at the next table paused their conversation. A waiter stopped mid-pour. "Marcus set me up with a janitor?" Claire's voice carried across the restaurant. "I'm an account executive at Hartwell Marketing. I manage million-dollar campaigns." Ethan remained standing, his posture unchanged. "I understand if this isn't what you expected." "Expected?" She laughed again, louder. "I expected someone. Professional. Someone on my level." She grabbed her coat from the chair she'd never sat in. "I don't date maintenance workers. I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous." She turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Every eye in the restaurant followed her, then turned to him. Ethan sat down slowly. He picked up the menu he'd been studying before she arrived, set it back down. The waiter approached cautiously. "Sir, I'm sorry about that. Not your fault." Ethan pulled out his wallet. "What do I owe for the water?" "Nothing, sir. Please, I'd prefer to pay." The waiter hesitated, then nodded. "As you wish." Ethan left a 20 on the table and stood. He walked through the silent restaurant, feeling the weight of every stare. No one spoke. No one needed to. The humiliation hung in the air like the snow hung in the sky, thick, cold, inescapable. Outside, the wind hit him immediately. Snow had accumulated on his truck's windshield. He brushed it off with his forearm, climbed in, sat in the cold cabin. He didn't start the engine right away. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, how'd it go?" Ethan stared at the message. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Finally, he typed, "Not a match." He started the truck and pulled out into the snowy streets. The city moved slowly around him, cars cautious on the white roads. Traffic lights reflected off the snow, red, yellow, green, painting the world in muted colors. The drive home took 40 minutes instead of the usual 20. He parked in front of his apartment building, a modest 3-story structure on the east side. The hallway smelled like Mrs. Chen's cooking from 2B, garlic and ginger, warm and familiar. He unlocked apartment 3C and stepped inside. The apartment was small but clean. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened into a living room with a couch and a TV. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator, stick figures holding hands. houses with triangle roofs, a dog they didn't have but she wanted. "Daddy!" She appeared from her bedroom, 7 years old with dark hair like his and eyes like her mother's. She wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with planets on them, even though it was only 7:30. "Hey, Lilypad." She ran to him and he lifted her, her small arms wrapping around his neck. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and toothpaste. "How was the date?" He set her down gently. "It was fine." "Did she like you?" "We decided we weren't a good match." Lily's face fell. "Oh." He knelt to her level. "But that's okay. Not everyone fits together, and that's normal." Marcus said she was really pretty. She was. But pretty isn't everything. Lily studied his face with the intensity children have, the kind that sees through adult lies. "Are you sad?" "No. I'm glad to be home with you." That part was true. He was glad. The restaurant, Claire's laughter, the stairs, all of it felt distant now, separated from this moment by the apartment door and his daughter's presence. "I made you something," Lily said, pulling him toward the kitchen table. A piece of construction paper lay there, folded in half. She'd written "Good Luck Dad" in purple crayon, with a drawing of 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a yellow sun. "You made this before I left," he said quietly. "I wanted your date to go good." He pulled her close again, his throat tight. "This is better than any date could have been." They spent the evening as they always did. He helped her finish her homework, math problems about addition and subtraction. They read 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web together on the couch. She fell asleep before the second chapter ended, her head heavy against his shoulder. He carried her to bed, tucked the blanket around her, and stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. The apartment was quiet, except for the radiator's periodic clanking. Snow tapped against the windows like gentle fingers. In the bathroom, he washed his face and avoided his reflection. The uniform still smelled faintly of the cleaning solutions he'd used earlier. He hung it on the hook behind the door. In his bedroom, barely larger than Lily's, he sat on the edge of the bed. The humiliation from the restaurant returned now, in the silence. Claire's laugh, the stares, the way she'd looked at his uniform like it was something dirty. He'd been a staff sergeant in the army. He'd led men through situations where split-second decisions meant life or death. He'd earned commendations, respect, authority, but that was before Sarah died, before Lily needed him home, before he'd chosen a job that let him be there when his daughter woke up and when she fell asleep. He didn't regret the choice. But nights like this, he felt the weight of judgment from people who measured worth in salary and titles. He lay back on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. The radiator clanked. Snow continued falling outside. Eventually, he slept. The alarm went off at 5:30. Ethan silenced it immediately, a habit from years of military discipline. The apartment was cold. The radiator had stopped working sometime in the night. He checked Lily's room. She was still asleep, buried under 2 blankets. He added a third from the closet, tucked it around her carefully. In the kitchen, he made coffee and oatmeal. The snow had stopped, but the city outside his window was transformed. Cars buried, streets narrow, everything white and still. The sun hadn't risen yet. The world existed in shades of gray and blue. By 6:15, Lily was awake. She emerged from her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. "It's cold, Daddy. Radiator's out. I'll fix it when I get home. Wear your thermal leggings under your jeans today." They ate breakfast together in the quiet. He packed her lunch sandwich, apple slices, crackers, a juice box. She insisted on adding a cookie from the package Mrs. Chen had given them last week. At 7, they left. The walk to Pinewood Elementary was 6 blocks. Normally they drove, but the truck needed new tires and the streets were treacherous. They walked instead, Lily's hand in his, their breath visible in the frozen air. Other parents and children moved through the snow like them, a scattered procession toward the red brick building with its familiar flag and playground. Some drove past carefully. Most walked. "My boots are getting wet," Lily said. "We're almost there." At the school entrance, he knelt to check her backpack straps. "Mrs. Patterson picks me up today because you work late," Lily finished. "I know, Daddy. And if there's any problem, she calls you first, then Grandma Rose." He kissed her forehead. "Smart kid." "I know," she said seriously. He watched her join the stream of children entering the building, her pink backpack visible among the others until she disappeared inside. The walk to Northgate Plaza took 40 minutes. The commercial district was slowly waking shops opening, delivery trucks navigating the narrow streets, business people in heavy coats hurrying to offices. Northgate Winter Plaza stood at the center of it all, a 5-story mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor, offices on floors 2 and 3, and the upscale restaurant on 4 and 5. The maintenance office was in the basement. Tom Rodriguez was already there, drinking coffee from a thermos. "Rough night?" Tom asked, looking at Ethan's face. "Radiators out at home." "You look worse than that." Ethan poured himself coffee from the ancient machine. "Blind date disaster." "Ah," Tom nodded knowingly. "Say no more." They reviewed the day's work orders. Most were routine: a flickering light on floor 2, a toilet running in the women's restroom on 3, the usual complaints about temperature variations. "I need to check the HVAC sensors," Ethan said. "Something felt off yesterday." "Off how?" "Temperature readings fluctuating. Could be the cold affecting the equipment." Tom shrugged. "Everything's been weird since this snow hit. Go ahead." Ethan took the service elevator to the roof access. The mechanical room housed the main HVAC controls, a complex system that regulated temperature and airflow throughout the building. He checked the sensors methodically. The cold had affected several ice forming around external components, interfering with accurate readings. He noted each one in his logbook, adjusted what he could, flagged what needed further attention. One sensor in particular concerned him. The fire suppression system's heat detector near the restaurant kitchen was showing intermittent errors. The extreme cold was causing condensation that froze, then thawed, confusing the sensor. He made a note. "Kitchen heat sensor unreliable. Monitor closely." It wasn't an emergency. Not yet. But his instincts, honed through years of maintaining complex systems under pressure, told him to pay attention. He returned to the basement office as the building came fully alive above him. Shops opened, workers arrived. The day began. By 10 o'clock, the plaza was busy. Despite the snow, people came. The ground floor atrium had been transformed for the Winter Art Festival, a weekend event where local children would paint, draw, and create winter-themed artwork. Ethan watched from the second-floor walkway as volunteers set up tables and easels. Parents milled around, drinking coffee from the vendor cart. Children's voices echoed through the space, excited and loud. Lily would come later, after school. Mrs. Patterson would bring her at 3:30. She'd been looking forward to this for weeks, the chance to paint a real big picture and have it displayed in the plaza. The contrast struck him. Last night's humiliation in the restaurant above, where people like Claire measured worth in job titles. Today's simple joy below, where children created without judgment. Tom's voice crackled through his radio. "Ethan, we got a complaint about cold air on floor 3. On my way." The afternoon passed in routine tasks. He adjusted a thermostat, replaced a ballast in a fluorescent fixture, cleared a minor drain clog. The work was straightforward, methodical. It kept his hands busy and his mind occupied. At 2 o'clock, he checked the HVAC system again. The kitchen heat sensor was still showing errors. He made another note, considered calling it in to the service company, decided to monitor it for another hour first. The Winter Art Festival was in full swing now. He could hear it from the maintenance corridors, children laughing, parents talking, someone playing guitar softly. His phone buzzed. "Mrs. Patterson, picking up Lily now. See you at the plaza at 3:30. He replied, "Thanks, I'll meet you at the main entrance." The building hummed around him. Voices, footsteps, the constant background noise of HVAC systems and elevator motors. Everything normal. Everything as it should be, except for that sensor. The one that kept flickering. The one his instincts kept drawing him back to. He checked it again at 2:30. Still unreliable. The extreme cold was definitely affecting it, and with the restaurant kitchen running full capacity for the lunch rush recovery, he made a decision. He climbed the service stairs to the restaurant level. The restaurant was transitioning from lunch to dinner prep. Kitchen staff moved efficiently, chopping vegetables, preparing stations. The head chef, a temperamental man named Pierre, was barking instructions in accented English. Ethan found the kitchen manager, a woman named Sarah Voss. "I need to check your suppression system," he said. "Now, we're prepping for the evening rush. The cold's affecting sensors. I need to verify everything's working correctly." She sighed. "Make it quick." He inspected the system visually. Everything appeared normal. The suppression controls were green, but the heat sensor, the one showing errors, was positioned directly above the main range where 6 burners ran continuously. "When did you last test the alarm?" he asked. "Last month." "Standard schedule. Test it again tomorrow." "First thing." "It's Sunday tomorrow." "Monday, then." "First thing." She gave him an odd look but nodded. He was heading back to the service stairs when he smelled it. Faint but distinct. Not food cooking. Something else. Burning insulation. He stopped. Traced the smell. It was coming from the wall near the range where electrical conduit ran up from the floor below. "Who's using the office directly below this?" he asked Sarah. "Hartwell Marketing, I think." "Floor 4. His stomach tightened. He pulled out his radio. "Tom, I need you to check the electrical panel for the 4th floor. What's going on?" "Possible short. I'm smelling burning insulation near the kitchen." "On it." Ethan remained in the kitchen, watching, waiting. The smell was faint but present. Pierre noticed him standing there. "You are in my way," the chef said. "I need to." The lights flickered. Just once, barely noticeable. Tom's voice on the radio. "Panels showing a fault on circuit 14. That's the 4th floor office suite. Kill the circuit." Already done. The smell didn't dissipate. If anything, it grew stronger. Ethan moved to the wall, placed his hand against it. "Warm. Too warm." "Everyone out of the kitchen," he said quietly. Pierre turned. "What?" "Out. Now. You cannot order me. There's fire in the wall. Get your people out." The word fire changed everything. Sarah Voss immediately started directing staff toward the exits. Pierre hesitated, then followed suit. Ethan pulled the fire alarm. Nothing happened. He pulled it again. Still nothing. The sensor. The cold, damaged sensor. The system thought there was no fire. He grabbed his radio. "Tom, manual alarm activation isn't working on floor 5. We need to evacuate the building." "What?" "Are you sure there's—" "I'm sure. Hit the main alarm. Now." A pause. Then, sirens started wailing throughout the building. The alarm echoed through Northgate Plaza, sharp and insistent. On the ground floor, the Winter Art Festival dissolved into confusion. Parents grabbed children. Volunteers abandoned tables. The orderly event became a surge of people toward exits. Ethan took the stairs down 2 at a time. The smoke hadn't reached visible levels yet, but it would. The fire was inside the walls, feeding on decades-old insulation, spreading through the building's skeleton. He reached the ground floor. The crowd was moving, but slowly. Too slowly. Parents were gathering coats, bags, artwork. Children were crying. Some people stood uncertain, looking around as if waiting for permission to leave. He spotted Mrs. Patterson near the main entrance, Lily beside her. Relief flooded through him. "Keep moving," he called to the crowd. "Stay low if you see smoke. Move together." A man in an expensive suit stopped. "Is this real?" Or just a drill? It's real. Keep moving. He reached Mrs. Patterson and Lily. His daughter's eyes were wide, but she wasn't crying. Not yet. Mrs. Patterson. Take her outside. Get across the street to the coffee shop. Wait there. Ethan. Please, now. The older woman nodded, taking Lily's hand firmly. Come on, sweetheart. Daddy? Lily's voice was small. He knelt quickly, meeting her eyes. I need you to go with Mrs. Patterson. Be brave for me. Can you do that? She nodded, trembling. I'll come get you soon, I promise. He kissed her forehead and stood. Mrs. Patterson led her away, and Ethan forced himself to turn back to the building. The evacuation was happening, but it wasn't organized. People clustered in the wrong places. Some headed toward the parking garage exactly where they shouldn't go. Smoke was starting to appear on the upper floors, wisps of gray drifting from ventilation grates. Tom appeared beside him. Fire department's on the way. ETA, 8 minutes. 8 minutes. In a building with 500 people and a fire spreading through the walls. We need to control the flow, Ethan said. People are going the wrong way. We're maintenance guys. Ethan was already moving. He positioned himself at the central corridor junction where people were splitting off. His voice came out different than before, louder, clear, carrying authority he hadn't used since his army days. This way, stay together. Parents, keep children close, no running. A few people responded immediately. Others hesitated, looking at his uniform, unsure whether to follow orders from a maintenance worker. An elderly woman stumbled. Ethan caught her, steadied her. I need to go back for my purse, she said. No, keep moving. I've got you. He guided her toward the main exit, then returned to the corridor. More people were coming down from the upper floors now. The smoke was thickening. Cover your mouths. Stay low. Move fast, but don't push. A security guard appeared young, maybe 22, clearly overwhelmed. I don't know what to do, he admitted. Take the south exit. Direct everyone to the plaza across the street. Keep them moving. Don't let them stop. The guard nodded and moved. Ethan checked his watch. 6 minutes since the alarm. The smoke was definitely worse. He could see it now, a gray fog creeping down from the upper floors. A manager from one of the retail stores approached him. Should we grab our inventory? Leave it. Get your people out. But the register. Leave it. The manager looked like he might argue, then saw something in Ethan's face and didn't. The crowd was thinning. Most people were outside now, but smoke was filling the atrium, making it hard to see. Ethan pulled his shirt over his mouth and nose. Anyone still inside? He called. Last call. A voice from the second floor. Help! Someone help! He didn't think. He moved. Robert Ellington had been in the restaurant when the alarm started. He'd been meeting with a client, discussing a potential acquisition over early dinner. The client had panicked immediately, grabbing his coat and rushing out. Robert had moved more deliberately. At 62, he'd lived through enough false alarms to be skeptical. But when he smelled smoke, real smoke, not burnt toast, he'd headed for the stairs. Now he stood on the second-floor landing, watching a maintenance worker direct the evacuation below. The man moved with precision, giving clear orders, positioning people, controlling chaos. Robert recognized the movements. The economy of motion. The voice that expected to be obeyed. Military. He descended the stairs slowly, staying to the side. The smoke was thicker here. His eyes watered, but he kept watching the maintenance worker. The man was checking each corridor, making sure it was clear. He wasn't rushing to save himself. He was sweeping the building. A woman's voice. Help! Someone help! The maintenance worker's head snapped toward the sound. He moved immediately, heading up the stairs Robert had just descended. Robert should leave. The smart thing was to leave, but instead he followed. The second floor was an office suite, cubicles and conference rooms. The smoke was heavy here, pouring from ventilation grates. The maintenance worker was moving through it, calling out, "Where are you?" "Here, I'm here." A woman appeared from an office, coughing. Middle-aged, business clothes, terror in her eyes. "I couldn't find the stairs. The smoke. I've got you. Stay low. Follow me." He took her arm and guided her back the way Robert had come. Robert followed them down. The woman was coughing hard, struggling to breathe. The maintenance worker stayed calm, supporting her weight. They reached the ground floor. Emergency lights were on now. The main lights had failed. Everything was red-tinted and surreal. "Can you make it outside?" the worker asked the woman. She nodded, still coughing. "Go. The exit's straight ahead." She stumbled toward it. The worker turned back toward the stairs. "Everyone's out," Robert said. The man turned, seeing him for the first time. "Then you should be too, sir. The building is clear?" "Not sure. I need to check." "The fire department. 6 minutes out when I last checked. That's a lifetime in a fire." He headed back up the stairs. Robert watched him go, then made a decision. He followed again. The third floor was worse. Smoke so thick, visibility was measured in feet. The worker had pulled his shirt over his face. He moved systematically, checking each office, each closet. "Fire department," a voice called from below. Finally, the worker leaned over the railing. "Third floor. Still clearing." A firefighter appeared, fully geared. "Sir, you need to evacuate. One more sweep. One more." He finished the floor. Found no one. Returned to the stairs where Robert and the firefighter waited. "Building's clear," he said. "You're sure?" the firefighter asked. "I'm sure." They descended together. More firefighters were entering, hauling equipment. The atrium was a haze of smoke and flashing lights. Outside, sirens wailed. The worker headed toward the exit. Robert followed him out into the cold. The plaza was chaos. Hundreds of people stood in the snow, watching smoke pour from the upper floors. Fire trucks surrounded the building. Police were setting up barriers. The worker stopped at the edge of the crowd, scanning faces. Looking for someone, Robert found himself still watching him. The man's hands were steady, no tremor, no shock. He'd just run into a burning building multiple times and he looked like he'd done routine maintenance. A woman ran up, older, gray-haired. "Ethan, Lily's been asking for you." "Ethan." So that was his name. The worker Ethan turned. "Where is she?" "Coffee shop across the street. I kept her there like you said." He nodded and started in that direction. Robert watched him go, something nagging at his memory. Then he saw it. The way Ethan moved through the crowd. The awareness of his surroundings. The controlled scan for threats. Robert had seen it before. In soldiers, in officers, he'd seen it in himself. Lily was sitting at a table in the coffee shop, surrounded by several other children from the art festival. Mrs. Patterson had organized them, bought hot chocolate, kept them calm, but Lily's eyes never left the window, watching for her father. When Ethan entered, she was off her chair and running before Mrs. Patterson could stop her. "Daddy." He caught her, lifted her, held her tight. She was crying now, all the fear she'd held back coming out at once. "I've got you. You're safe. I'm here. I was scared. There was smoke and people were running and I couldn't find you. I know, but you were brave. You did exactly what I asked. I'm so proud of you." He carried her back to the table, sat with her in his lap. Mrs. Patterson brought him water. His throat was raw from smoke. He drank gratefully. Through the window, they watched the firefighters work. The smoke was lessening. They had it under control. A fire captain entered the coffee shop, looking around. His eyes landed on Ethan. "You Ethan Walker?" "Yes, sir. I need to ask you some questions about the building layout." Ethan nodded. He set Lily gently in Mrs. Patterson's care and followed the captain outside. The next hour was a blur of questions, explanations, and controlled chaos. The fire captain wanted to know everything: the building's systems, where the fire had started, why the alarm system had failed initially. Ethan explained about the sensors, the cold, the electrical short he'd detected. He showed them his notes, his logbook with the warnings he'd documented. "You did a full sweep before evacuating?" the captain asked. "Yes, sir. That's not protocol for civilians." "No, sir." The captain studied him. "Military?" "Army, staff sergeant. Retired 4 years ago." The captain nodded slowly. "That explains it. You ran this evacuation like a military operation." "I did what needed doing." "You probably saved lives. That systematic sweep, the way you controlled the crowd, most people would have panicked." Ethan didn't respond. Didn't need to. The fire was fully contained now. The building was damaged but standing. No serious injuries. One case of smoke inhalation, the woman from the second floor. She was already being treated by paramedics. A reporter from the local news approached. "Sir, can I ask you some questions? People are saying you're a hero." "No," Ethan said firmly. "I'm not. I'm just someone who did his job." "But you risked your life." "I did my job." He walked away before she could ask more questions. He was heading back to the coffee shop when he saw her. Claire. She stood at the edge of the crowd, staring at him. Her perfect makeup was smudged. Her designer coat had ash on it. She looked small and uncertain, nothing like the confident woman who'd laughed at him 24 hours ago. She started toward him. He could have avoided her. Should have, maybe. But he was too tired to care. "Ethan," she said. I saw what you did. I was in the building. I work for Hartwell Marketing, 4th floor. I hope you got out okay." "I did, thanks to you." "You." She stopped, swallowed. "Last night, I was horrible to you. You were honest about what you wanted." "No, I was cruel and wrong. I judged you based on—" She gestured vaguely at his uniform. "I didn't see who you actually are." He could have accepted the apology graciously, could have made this easy for her. But he was covered in ash, his throat hurt from smoke, and his daughter was waiting for him. "What you saw last night was also who I am," he said. "I maintain buildings. I fix things that break. That's my job, and I'm not ashamed of it. I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant, and that's fine. We all have our standards. But I need to get back to my daughter now." He started to walk past her. "Ethan, wait. Can I at least buy you coffee sometime?" To apologize properly, he stopped, looked at her. She was beautiful, successful, everything society said he should want. But he remembered her laugh in the restaurant, the mockery in her eyes. "I don't think that's a good idea," he said quietly. "Take care, Claire." He left her standing there and went back to Lily. Robert Ellington stood in the plaza, snow beginning to fall again. The evening was coming on, the sky darkening. The fire was out, the crowd was dispersing. But he remained. He'd watched Ethan's interaction with the reporter, the quiet refusal of hero status, the way he'd walked away from attention. He'd watched the conversation with Claire, his daughter. He'd been meeting a client when she'd mentioned her disastrous blind date. "A maintenance worker," she'd said, laughing. "Can you imagine?" Robert had smiled politely, but he hadn't imagined his daughter would be so cruel about it. Now he watched Ethan emerge from the coffee shop with a small girl in his arms. The girl's face was buried in his shoulder. He was speaking to her softly, carrying her through the crowd. Robert moved to intercept them. Not quickly, just positioning himself in their path. Ethan saw him coming and stopped. Recognition flickered in his eyes. They'd seen each other in the building, in the smoke. "Sir," Ethan said. Polite, neutral. Robert looked at him properly now. Mid-30s, fit, moved like a soldier. Probably infantry, from the way he'd cleared that building, the kind of man who stayed calm under pressure because pressure was familiar. "You're Claire's date from last night," Robert said. Ethan's expression didn't change. "Yes, sir." She told me about it. Laughed about the maintenance worker who showed up in his uniform. Your daughter has every right to her standards. Does she? Robert studied him. What branch? Army. 82nd Airborne. Retired Staff Sergeant. Robert felt something click into place. The way Ethan carried himself, the authority in his voice during the evacuation, the systematic sweep of the building. Robert had served too. Marines. Vietnam. A lifetime ago, but some things you never forgot. Why'd you leave? Ethan glanced at the girl in his arms. My wife died. Lily needed me home. Simple. Direct. No elaboration needed. Robert nodded slowly. He'd made different choices, stayed in his career, built his business empire, prioritized success over presence. His own children had grown up with nannies and boarding schools. They'd turned out fine. Successful. But did they know him? Really know him? The snow was falling harder now. People were leaving, heading to cars, to homes, to warmth. Robert made a decision. He stepped back. The motion caught Ethan's attention. Then Robert came to attention back straight, shoulders squared, and raised his hand in a formal military salute. The plaza seemed to go quiet. People nearby stopped, stared. Ethan stood very still. The girl, Lily, lifted her head from his shoulder, confused. Slowly, Ethan shifted Lily's weight to one arm. Then he returned the salute, his movement crisp and exact despite the child he held. They held it for 3 seconds, an acknowledgement between men who'd served, who'd stood between chaos and innocent people, who understood duty. Robert lowered his hand. Ethan did the same. Thank you for your service, Robert said. Both past and present, sir. Ethan's voice was rough. Thank you for yours. They stood there in the falling snow, the burned building behind them, the crowd dispersing around them. 2 men from different generations, different branches, different wars. But the same code, the same understanding. Claire appeared beside her father. She'd watched the whole thing. Her face was pale. We're leaving, Robert said. Come on. He walked away without another word to Ethan. Claire followed, looking back once. Ethan remained where he was, holding his daughter. Daddy? Lily asked. Who was that man? Someone who understands what it means to serve. Why did he salute you? Because some things are more important than what job you have or how much money you make. Some things are about character, about doing what's right when it's hard. She thought about this. Like you going back in the building, like that. And like you being brave when you were scared. She hugged him tighter. Can we go home now? Yeah, lily pad. Let's go home. The walk back to their apartment took an hour. The streets were darker now, the snow reflecting what little light remained. Ethan carried Lily the whole way. She'd offered to walk, but he wanted her close. Mrs. Patterson had offered them a ride. Tom Rodriguez had offered too. He'd declined both. The cold air was clearing his head, and the walk gave him time to process everything that had happened. Lily talked quietly as they walked, asking questions about the fire, about why some alarms hadn't worked, about whether her painting from the art festival was okay. Probably not, he said honestly. The building was pretty damaged. Oh, she was quiet for a moment. That's sad. I worked hard on it. You can make another one. Will they have another festival? Eventually. When they fix the building, will you fix it? He smiled despite his exhaustion. Probably not. They'll need specialists for this kind of damage. But I might help. They passed the coffee shop where they sometimes got donuts on Saturday mornings, the grocery store where they shopped, the laundromat where they did their clothes every Wednesday. Their life stretched out along these familiar blocks. Daddy? Lily asked as they turned onto their street. Yeah? That lady from last night. The one who laughed. Was she at the fire? He hesitated. Yes. Did she say sorry? She did. Are you still mad at her? I wasn't mad. just disappointed. But she said sorry. Doesn't that make it better? He thought about Claire's face in the plaza, the genuine regret, the offer of coffee. Sometimes saying sorry isn't enough, he said carefully. Sometimes people need to change, not just apologize. And sometimes it's okay to not accept an apology if you don't think the person really understands what they did wrong. That's complicated. Yeah, it is. They reached their building. Mrs. Chen was in the hallway, just returning from work herself. Ethan, I heard about the fire. Are you both okay? We're fine, just tired. I made extra dinner. Let me bring you some. Mrs. Chen, you don't have to. Nonsense. You saved people today. Let me bring you soup. She disappeared into her apartment before he could argue further. 5 minutes later, she appeared with a container of hot soup and a smaller container of rice. For Lily too, she said. Get some rest. Both of you. Inside their apartment, it was cold. The radiator still wasn't working. Ethan made a mental note to fix it tomorrow. Tonight, they'd use extra blankets. He heated the soup Mrs. Chen had brought. They ate together at the small kitchen table, not talking much. The TV was off. The silence was comfortable. After dinner, he ran a bath for Lily. While she played with her bath toys, he sat on the closed toilet lid, listening to her chatter about school and friends and the painting she'd make to replace the lost one. It's going to be even better, she declared, because I learned what I did wrong on the first one. What did you do wrong? I made the snow too white. Real snow isn't just white. It has blue in it and purple sometimes. Mrs. Chen told me that. Mrs. Chen is very wise. I know. After her bath, he helped her into clean pajamas, the ones with planets. She wanted to read, but her eyes were drooping. Tomorrow, he promised. Tonight, you need to sleep. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Of course. He sat on the edge of her bed as she settled under the blankets. Her hair was damp, her face clean, her eyes already closing. Daddy? Yeah? I'm glad you're my dad. His throat tightened. I'm glad you're my daughter. Even though I can't salute like that man did, you don't need to salute. You just need to be brave and kind, and you're already both of those things. She smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. Ethan stayed there, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of the day settle onto his shoulders. His body ached. His throat was raw. His clothes still smelled like smoke. But Lily was safe. Everyone had gotten out of the building. No one had died. He'd done what needed doing. Nothing more, nothing less. Eventually, he stood and went to his own room. He didn't bother with a shower. He just lay down on his bed, still in his smoke-stained clothes, and stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. Marcus, just saw the news. You're a hero, man. He didn't reply. Another text. Tom, boss wants to talk to you tomorrow. I think you're getting a raise. He didn't reply to that either. A third text. Unknown number. This is Claire. My dad got your number from building records. I'm sorry. For everything. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. He stared at that one for a long time. Finally, he typed, I appreciate the apology, but I think it's better if we don't stay in touch. I hope you find what you're looking for. He hit send and turned off his phone. Outside, the snow continued to fall. The city was quiet, blanketed in white. Somewhere, firefighters were still working, securing the building, making sure no hotspots remained. Somewhere, Robert Ellington was probably telling his wife about the maintenance worker who'd run into a burning building. About the salute in the snow. Somewhere, Claire was reading his text and maybe understanding, finally, what she'd missed. But here, in this small apartment with the broken radiator and the drawings on the fridge, Ethan Walker closed his eyes and let himself rest. He'd done his job, protected his daughter, helped people who needed helping. Tomorrow he'd fix the radiator. Maybe look for a second blanket in the closet. call his boss about the raise he'd probably turned down because it would mean working hours that didn't let him see Lily before school. But tonight, he just breathed. In the morning, the sun would rise over a snow-covered city. The news would run stories about the fire. Some would mention his name. Most wouldn't. It didn't matter. He'd done what was right. Not for recognition, not for redemption, not to prove anything to anyone, just because it needed doing. And in the end, that was enough. The radiator clanked once, trying futilely to start. Ethan made a mental note about which parts he'd need. Then he let himself drift toward sleep, listening to the silence, feeling the cold, knowing that tomorrow he'd fix what was broken and keep going. Because that's what he did. That's who he was. And no amount of laughter, no judgment, no salute could change that. He was Ethan Walker, single father, maintenance worker, former soldier, a man who did his job, loved his daughter, and slept soundly, knowing he'd done right. The snow fell outside. Inside, he slept. And that was the story. Not of a hero, just of a man who showed up when it mattered, who stayed calm when others panicked, who walked away from recognition with the same dignity he walked into danger. The kind of man the world needs more of. The kind of man who doesn't need a salute to know his worth, but who accepts one when it's offered soldier to soldier with quiet grace. The apartment settled into silence. Outside, the city dreamed, and Ethan Walker rested, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new broken things to fix, new moments to be present for his daughter, ready for all of it, unshaken, unbowed, unchanged by either humiliation or honor, just himself, and that was more than enough.